This is what happened when my uncle caught me playing with myself. Turbo Seribed, I transcribed this, get rid of this notice, go unlimited. Before we get started with the story, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Thought my uncle was observing me, and I never expected that I would find myself in such an unpleasant and uncomfortable situation. Uncle came to visit us for a few days, and while I was glad to see him, I was not expecting him to be there at that time. I felt secure and comfortable in the seclusion of my chamber, relishing the tranquility all on my own. I was caught in my thoughts, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. I might read a book or play with some toys. I was delighted to spend the afternoon doing tiny things, and the options were infinite. Tiny did I know that everything was about to change in a big way. I'd heard others talk about growing up, but I never truly thought about how it might feel. And thrilling, my skin felt softer, and some sections of my body appeared to be expanding faster than others. It was as if my body was trying to communicate things to me that I didn't yet comprehend. And my curiosity continued to increase in tandem with it. I was really looking forward to finding out more about the changes that were taking place. One day, while I was lying on my bed, I began to stroke my arm and feel how smooth it was. First, it appeared to be harmless, just a little curiosity, but then my hand moved nearly by itself to different places of my body. I was not thinking about what I was doing too much. It was just a natural, tranquil moment for me. I felt a thrill when my fingertips brushed against locations I had never noticed before. It was a strange feeling, but it was also exciting. I continued on, wondering why I felt that way. The feelings intensified as I ran my hands over my body, which was getting bigger. I wasn't completely sure what was going on, but it felt good, and I couldn't help myself. I was in my own world, loving the smooth, delicate touches. Filled with excitement, and my heart was racing. I touched new locations on my body and had a pleasant tingling sensation. It was a strange but wonderful feeling, and I continued to explore my body as it grew, feeling the sensations become more intense. I didn't completely grasp what was going on, but it felt incredible, and I couldn't stop myself. I was in my own world, relishing the soft and delicate taps on my heart. Heart was beating a little faster, but it didn't feel bad. It simply felt different. I was thrilled to have the opportunity to explore my own body in this way and find out what it may feel like. I was completely unaware that there was a possibility of someone else watching, which made the experience much more exciting. I closed my eyes and sank deeper into the pleasant, tranquil feeling of being alone with myself. Was happy to be alone, and I felt safe and protected. Thoughts to wander and become lost in the feelings, and it was amazing. I didn't hear any footsteps or the door creaking. I was completely unaware that my uncle could be lurking in the shadows nearby, observing me. For a period of time, I was the only one investigating and learning about my body in a way that I had never done before. I didn't even know enough to pose those questions yet, so I didn't think about whether it was right or bad. I was alone with my thoughts and the unusual new sensations that were taking over my body. I was completely unaware that my uncle was surreptitiously monitoring me during those quiet moments when I believed I was alone. I was unaware that he had been standing there. He felt that I was completely alone. I never thought that someone, especially my uncle, would be spying on me. I was utterly oblivious to anything that was going on outside of my room. I was immersed in my own little universe. But then something happened that made me feel a shiver run down my spine. I heard something creak, even though the sound was mild. It was loud enough to make my heart race in the quiet of the house. For a little moment, I opened my eyes wide. I was unsure of what to do, so I stood still. My body responded before my head was able to catch up. I hastily pulled the blanket over myself in an attempt to hide. My heart was beating so quickly that I thought it may explode out of my chest. I was unable to breathe. I was lying there, my entire body tight, and I gently turned my head to look at the door, scared of what I may see. If you are still watching this video and find the narrative motivating, please leave a comment with the number 1 so that I know you are still with me. And there he was. My uncle is standing at the door and looking at me. His eyes were wide, and his face appeared weird, almost as if it were frozen. He was silent and simply watching. He gave me a glance that made me feel uneasy. It felt like the air in the room suddenly turned heavy, and my skin tingled. His look made me feel like I was stuck. What was the reason for the way he was staring at me? How long had he been standing there? I had a lot of questions, but I was unable to locate any answers. All I knew was that I felt humiliated, vulnerable, and afraid all at once. My uncle, who I thought I could trust, had seen me in a manner that no one else had. I never thought I would see Uncle I in a predicament like that. I was shocked and gasped, attempting to pretend that everything was okay, even though my heart was racing and my hands were trembling. I attempted to make my voice seem normal, but I could hear the tremor in it, and I was aware that he could hear it as well. I had been discovered, and there was no way to conceal it. I was trying to figure out what to do next, and my mind was racing. My face felt flushed. However, my uncle did not make any comments. He just stood there looking at me with a strange and disturbing expression on his face. I felt so alive as he fixed his gaze on me. I could feel my stomach twisting with excitement. I couldn't quit thinking about why he was standing there. Asterisk, how long has he been watching me? The concept made me feel a little dizzy inside. I had a lot of questions in my head, but I didn't get any answers. What are you looking at me like that for? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I was so excited that I couldn't speak much louder. I felt so much alive. I was also feeling upset at that time. What was the reason he was staring at me like that? Wasn't he aware that it was incorrect? I had assumed that he was meant to be someone I could trust, but now I feel like he has deceived me. What type of individual would just stand there and spy on someone? You ought not to be doing it. He finally spoke, but his voice didn't seem normal either. It was quiet, just a whisper. And there was something odd about it. I was unable to determine whether it was humiliation, guilt, or something else that I didn't even want to think about. His words were felt. He was heavy, as if he was about to reprimand me, but there was something darker in his tone that made my skin crawl. I was unable to look him in the eye any longer. My head was spinning, and my emotions were jumping between embarrassment, fear, and rage. What was the reason he didn't go? Why did he wait so long to say something? What was the reason he was monitoring me in the first place? I wished that the ground would open up and swallow me so that I would no longer have to confront him. I felt so insignificant and vulnerable, and I was unsure of what to do next. He simply stood there and watched me. He was completely still. He continued to stare at me with his eyes. That's when I really started to feel scared. I could feel my entire body stiffen up, and my heart began to beat even faster. What was he planning to do? Assis. What was he planning to do? The question kept repeating in my head. I felt like I was stuck. It felt like being a small animal that was trapped by a larger, more frightening predator with no way to escape. I was unsure of what to say or do. I was unable to think clearly. I have always considered my uncle to be a member of the family for as long as I can remember. He was a person I believed I could rely on, someone who was meant to keep an eye on me. However, at that moment, as he stood there looking at me like that, he no longer felt like the same person. He seemed like a stranger to me, someone I had never met before. It made me even more excited to find out what would happen next. I was quite curious about what he was thinking because I had never seen him like this before. I wanted to say anything to make him stop looking at me like way, but I couldn't find the words. I was completely paralyzed, unable to do anything except wait and watch what would happen next. My uncle quietly shut the door behind him, and the faint click of the lock made me feel even more like I was stuck. Instead of leaving, he walked farther into the room and sat down slowly on the side of the bed. I was overwhelmed with anticipation, and my heart was still beating. I kept a close eye on him, my eyes wide open and full of questions. For a little while, he gazed at me with a serene expression on his face, as if nothing out of the ordinary had just occurred. We were both quiet, simply looking at each other. Then, at last, he said something. "You have developed into a lovely young woman. First, I thought his statements were odd, but a part of me wanted to trust what he said, even though everything else was unclear. Hearing someone express that I was lovely made me feel happy. He spoke in a calm voice, and the way he said it nearly made me feel secure. It seemed as if he didn't feel angry with me for what had just transpired. That moment, the tension in the room appeared to disappear. I felt less frightened than before. And the comforting things he spoke made me believe that everything would turn out fine. However, I still had a slight feeling of uncertainty deep within. I wanted to think that I was safe. So I pushed away the thoughts that told me something about the entire situation was off. While he was sitting there, my body began to. The fear I had felt before was gradually disappearing. And I started to feel more comfortable. After that, my uncle leaned in a little closer and asked me in a hushed, conspiratorial tone, "Do you think we should have some fun?" His comments lingered in the air, and for a while, I was unsure of how to respond. My head was puzzled, but my body reacted in a different way. I had a peculiar sensation inside of me, as if I was being drawn in by a temptation, and I didn't know what it meant. Even though my mind was whirling with confusion, my body felt warm and tingly, as if it was ready to give in. It felt like my body was responding to him in a way that I had not anticipated. I can't explain it, but the feelings were there. They were strong, and they pulled me toward my uncle. Even though it didn't make logic, I was excited and eager to follow his suggestion. I had been feeling things and exploring my body by myself. I didn't completely comprehend. But everything changed when my uncle came in. He was there this time, watching me, and I had this incredible idea that it may feel even better if someone else were touching me. It was a really weird notion, but it made me feel excited. I didn't say anything, but I did give my uncle a hint. However, my actions spoke for me. And it was as if I was silently informing him that I was willing to let him join me. I wasn't, but it was still a pretty entertaining idea. I accomplished it. What is the reason at that point? I simply wanted to find out what it would be like to be with someone else. I could see my uncle's eyes expand in surprise when he lifted the blanket. He was shocked at how much I had grown. It seemed like time had passed so quickly, and I was no longer the small boy he used to play with. He smiled warmly and exclaimed, "Wow, you've grown up." I was overwhelmed with a variety of feelings by what he said. I was really happy to find out that he noticed. The transformations that I underwent were astonishing. He put his hand on my shoulder gently, and at that moment, I could sense how proud and happy he was. It was a reassuring gesture, and it made me feel like I was important. I could feel a strong bond between us as we had an emotional moment. It seemed like we were both recognizing the extent of my transformation and the significance of our relationship. My uncle and I had a time together that was both bizarre and exciting. He carefully removed our garments and gazed at each other. I was anxious, but I was also well prepared for what was about to happen next. When we finally came together, I could feel his warmth next to me, and my heart was beating. If you are still watching this video and find the narrative motivating, please leave a comment with the number 2 so that I know you are still here with me. It felt like something unique was starting. Like a great time had come only for us. We moved gently, like dancers in a wonderful story, getting to know one another in a way we had never done before. I felt butterflies in my stomach as my heart raced with excitement, just like when you're going to embark on a fun adventure. We went on an amazing adventure. It seemed as if we were uncovering an entirely new world. We were overwhelmed with curiosity, and every touch seemed like a delicate spark lighting up our hearts. It felt a little frightening. Yet it also had a warm and reassuring feeling. It was similar to snuggling up in a cozy blanket on a cold day. That time, nothing else in the world was important. We were entirely absorbed in the moment, and all of the anxieties and noises around us melted away. We were the only 2 people there, standing next to each other and experiencing a strong bond. We exchanged smiles and whispered, feeling as though we were in a private realm that belonged only to us. It was a moment that we will never forget. A period when everything felt perfect and full of love. Eventually, we realized that we needed to exit the room. We took a big breath and got dressed, attempting to pretend that nothing had happened. We exchanged smiles and gazed at each other, as if nothing had happened, while keeping our secret secure. We both felt that it was a unique experience that we had gone through together. and it felt like a small trip. Everything felt normal again after we left the room. We joked around and teased one another like we always did, and we talked and laughed together. From that day on, we both knew the moment was real, even though it felt like a dream. We carried our secret with us, and it made our bond even stronger. The fact that we could trust each other with anything made our friendship feel even more meaningful. Regardless of what happens, we will always have that moment to look back on, concealed like a treasure in our hearts.